Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to my session on organic and content-driven user acquisition in a product-led world. So three objectives really. Firstly, it's about understanding the role of content marketing and organic user acquisition in a product-led approach to growth. Secondly, we want to combine some simple strategic and tactical frameworks that will help you get started with content marketing and thinking about SEO. So we want it to be quite actionable, and hopefully you'll have some good takeaways that you can go and play around with and experiment with after this session. And then thirdly, just finishing off with a short summary about how you can build your own simple one-page content marketing strategy for a product-led approach to growth. So they're the three key objectives for today's session. So let's look into that first point. So what is the role of content marketing and organic acquisition in product-led growth? And really at the heart of product-led growth is the product itself. So the product acts as the primary driver of growth and of future user acquisition. But in addition to the product, you have supporting acquisition channels. So of course, you can use paid acquisition to drive new users. You can leverage your social networks. You can use referrals, backlinks, and so forth. And of course, organic. So people are going to be searching for products and solutions, and you want to make sure that you're going to be found. But regardless as to which of these supporting acquisition channels you actually use, at the heart of that is content. So you can't run successful paid acquisition, you can't run a successful social strategy, you can't benefit from referrals and backlinks, and you can't acquire users through organic channels without content itself. So that acts as the hub of all this acquisition. So you want to identify additional acquisition channels to feed into your product-led growth model, and you really want to be thinking organic first. So let's dig into content marketing and SEO within product-led growth. And despite what I just said, thinking organic, what you don't want to fall into the trap of is actually building an audience. So think organic, but having said that, don't build an audience. And this might sound a little contradictory, but when it comes to content marketing, there are really two schools of thought. So there is content as a publication, and then there is content as a library. And I think marketers typically default to content as a publication when they start thinking about content marketing and building a content marketing strategy, in that you operate your content like a publication, like a newspaper, like a magazine, which you send out to your readers on a subscription basis. And while that does work, it is better suited to certain situations. So where you have longer buying cycles, for example, then a publication approach works quite well so that you can build a relationship with your buyer. Typically, it's problem driven. So someone has a problem, they're not sure what the solution is, and they're going to be looking for possible ways to solve the problem that they have. Publication thinking ties very nicely with thought leadership and brand marketing as well. So you can really position yourself as a thought leader within the space you're operating, but you immediately start bringing in mechanic problems or challenges that you have as a SaaS business itself. So firstly, you need to acquire new readers, but then you also need to retain those existing readers. So it, in a way, becomes its own mini SaaS business model. And with the publication approach, you're typically pushing content to readers. So when you have something new, you will share it with your audience, with your newsletter subscribers, with your podcast subscribers, and so forth. But on the other hand, we have content as a library. And this works very well with short user cycles and is typically solution driven. So people are aware of a problem and they have identified a solution, and now they're looking for the best solution out there, in the same way that people might go to the library knowing what they want to check out in advance. Whereas publication thinking ties in very nicely with thought leadership. This is library thinking is a great way to work on demand and lead gen. And rather than acquiring and retaining readers, it's about helping users. And in the same way, a library draws people to itself so that they can come and check out books. Content as a library is really about attracting users to content rather than pushing content to readers. And if we take a couple of companies as an example, so I mentioned I was previously working at Advanced B2B, which is a marketing agency specialized in working with SaaS companies and focusing on growth marketing. And if we take Calendly, which is a SaaS company that fits in very well to the product-led growth model, from a content strategy perspective, I would lean that Advanced B2B is more of a publication and Calendly is much better suited to a library. And we can just take an example of the two to see how this works in practice. So Advanced B2B, a common problem that people might be searching for in Google is a B2B SaaS go-to-market strategy. So for early stage SaaS companies trying to figure out their go-to-market strategy and they're not exactly sure how to go about it, this is a term that they would put into Google. On the other hand, for Calendly, if you're thinking about a way to schedule meetings that is simple and super easy, then you're going to type this into Google and hopefully you will find Calendly. So people already are aware of a solution that they might be looking for. So really, your product-led growth content marketing strategy should be to build a library of resources that people can find when they need a solution to their problem. And I think it's nothing really more complex than that. It's quite simple, it's quite straightforward. And I think the simpler you can make things, the easier it is when it comes to content marketing and SEO and trying to get a handle on all these things. But the next question, who should I write for? And what's important to understand in a product-led approach to growth is that you have two different types of people that you're addressing. So you have users and then you have buyers, since the user in many cases might not necessarily be the buyer. So we can see here in this picture that we have one person who is going to be buying and one person who's probably going to be using most of these toys in the picture, i.e. the parent and the kid. And this is good to keep in mind because in marketing, we're so obsessed with buyer personas and defaulting to creating and documenting buyer personas, which is definitely not a bad thing, that's for sure. But that is, I think, more aligned with the publication approach. So for example, at Advanced B2B, you'd want to develop really good buyer personas and conduct custom interviews, identify their challenges and goals, map the buying journey, and build buyer personas so that you can really address those people in the content that you're creating. But with a product-led approach to growth, most likely you want to focus on the user. So who's having this problem and who can we target with our content? So think about the user, conduct user interviews. Instead of focusing on wider challenges and goals, just figure out what is the job to be done? What is the job that your product does for the user? And then in many cases, the user might not actually be the buyer. So you need to map their role in the buying process and figure out what happens when people start using the product. How are they actually going to then influence the buying process? Okay, so recap. I should build a library of content to help my users, but how should I go about creating content optimized for organic traffic? And there are many ways you can go about this. And there's no right or wrong way necessarily, but I'm going to provide one option for you to go away and think about. And this is the topic cluster model, sometimes referred to as hub and spoke, as a way to actually take that strategy into practice. So just briefly about why the topic cluster approach. So to acquire organic traffic, you really want to be publishing a consistent stream of high quality content about a limited number of topics. And there are two very important benefits of the topic cluster model. So firstly, it's going to help you increase long-term organic traffic to your website and also increase brand awareness among your desired target audience for the field within which you're operating. So two super important benefits. So there are many benefits to this approach. And I think that many companies are using this approach, but there's a really good opportunity to jump on this early on and get a firm foothold on key topics in areas before other companies start doing the same. And the old approach to SEO was really built around keyword and keyword stuffing. And the great thing about the topic cluster framework is that it forces prioritization. So you can't own every keyword, but you can own a couple of high level topics. Again, in line with the library approach to content marketing, cluster content is evergreen. So instead of writing something that is topical or time-based, it should be evergreen, everlasting, and always relevant so that it is consistently bringing in organic traffic. And then also gaining authority on specific topics helps customers form a connection with you, with your brand, and it helps to help them understand what it is you actually do and which areas you're really a specialist in. So then the third part, how can we actually tie this together and create a very simple and short content marketing strategy? And really, in its most simple form, you can make a content strategy that essentially answers these 5 questions. So this is the 5-point content strategy, and this is something Jimmy Daly from Animals has talked about on his blog. And it's a super simple way just to answer some questions and put together a content marketing strategy. So it's who will you write for, what will you write about, when will you publish, how will you earn traffic, and how will you support the business. So in summary, we want to be thinking organic, not paid, think library, not publication, think user personas, not buyer personas, think topic clusters, not keywords, and most importantly, think strategically, not tactically. So this is so important. So before you do anything, really think, why are you doing something and what approach you're going to take? What is the plan before you then jump into the nitty gritty, going to keywordtool.io, doing your keyword research, building actual content pieces. So make sure you have a good strategy in place and then go in and execute tactically.